Jump on a call before you open it. I went through the setup process, aiming my computer at a yoga mat so she can get a view of my body. I open the kit. There's a rock hard foam roller, some firm, baseball sized colorful balls, resistant bands, but no bug spray. Let's start with the roller. We need to relax basically everything below the waist, so go ahead and start with your quads. Okay, I say, plopping my body down on the mat with the roller at my crotch. As you move, you'll find pain points, but instead of avoiding them, I want you to lean into them with all your weight until they pass. Breathe in and out the whole time. Oh, shit, this hurts. Oh yeah, mind your crotch. Don't lean into that pain. It'll never pass. I'll set a timer. The pain points are like the dull bite from a rock in your shoe. Is that the Gilmore Girls theme song, I ask? Yeah, she says. I'm finally getting around to watching it now that I work from home. It's Carole King, and I remember listening to a Tapestry cassette on my boombox as a kid, singing along like there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. I swallow back a lump in my throat. The timer goes off, and I happily slide off the roller. Now that it's over, I feel relief, like when your ear suddenly clears from water after a day at the beach. My body is waking up. I can even feel my toes. It's not over yet, the Cairo says. She walks me through different parts of my body, my glutes, calves, and thighs, uncovering hidden tensions while Rory and Lorelei blast all of their thoughts in constant rapid fire. All the while, I'm uncovering little memories from years past with an alien sense of wonder. How much longer, I ask. Tears wet my eyes. The memory of finding my cat half eaten by a coyote is suddenly fresh in my mind. You're ready for the next step, the Cairo says. She's drinking water from a big silicone straw and chewing tiny bites of popcorn, and that's all I need to understand how healthy she is. I want you to get against the wall there on your knees with your hands under your chest. Now put your knee against the wall with your foot right above it, hands under your chest. Get your left foot as close to your hand as you can. I can't do it. Sure you can. I'm here all day. Take it a little at a time and you'll start to feel everything light up. There. I can see it in your eyes. Don't struggle. Just stay put and let it happen. The buzzing moves, pulsing down my leg. My skin starts to bubble and I can see the wasps emerge through my toes. Every part of my body flushes with emotion, sadness, regret, anger, something I barely recognize, joy. I'm gonna hang up now. When you're all alone, there won't be anyone else to comfort you, no one to distract you from your feelings. You can gaze down the well into the infinite expanses inside you and wait for it to come. But I have good news. You don't have to be alone, really. This is the perfect moment to spend some time with yourself and enjoy it while you have it left. Thank you.
Bury your fears and guru, soothing science narratives so thorough. Cozy up the worlds and the space between us, under fire blankets for ancient trees. Then hear the crickets sing through circuits, a song of firefighting boats, spraying the ocean with water. A song of firefighting boats, spraying the ocean with water.
Check, 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 check.
closed. It was the end of objects, the end of material goods. We mourned the screams, the sounds of malls long ago. We couldn't love objects enough. The window shopping disappeared. We disappeared into the highways. The deco buildings were choked by vines. When nature returned, we were dirt. And that's what we were, ruins in the garden. Lone Star. In the end, Houston will launch us into outer space once more. We'll peer at what they call the little blue engine. They'll call it Earth, or a failure in the distant future. They'll tell us the story of first man, first woman, first man on the moon, first person to shape another person out of clay. God. They'll talk about the motherships and fatherships. By then, we'll have escaped the Milky Way. They'll tell us about the little things that once cradled the bigger things. Our first sun. They will not let us dream. They will not tell us what it means. And we won't know if this is a blessing or a curse. Eventually, another ending will come. We won't know walls because we're so far away. Our children, many generations from now, will ask, why did we leave Earth? What was the moon like? We left Mars too. Oh, our feral homeworlds. Nobody can answer our questions because they left us outside history. In a dream, I'll misremember physical laws and say, gravity is like falling in love. We don't remember the ground. We float like cosmic dust and forget everything. I'm alone on the craft now, the fated Lone Star. I'm riding the last remnant of Tejas. It's the end of an experiment, and distant stars won't remember my name.
after your face turned gray. Fell ill on Thanksgiving Day. Your voice like spiders inside Folgers can. Help me understand. You barely walking out that front door. You don't know what to say. Don't you want some more? Your voice is like the plumbing squad. Help me understand. Weren't you scared when you took that fall in the backyard? Your balance lost, your tendon failed, your voice gone. No one around to help you get up. I don't understand. I can't feel your feet. Bacteria find a feast. Neglected flesh and stew. Your voice is like nothing's ever been wrong. Never wanted, never worried, never seen. Help, 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 help. How can't you put yourself through it? All this must be love. Or worry, worthy of so much. Your voice is like remembered pain. I must be living and breathing. Help me understand the end. So I know how to stop. Thank you.
this one work? Cool. Dr. Bogle, I am a student at North Texas and noticed your statement in an article supporting homosexuality. You probably think I am crazy for writing this, but I desperately need you to know some things. Ever since I can remember, I have had sexual feelings toward females and not males. I have dated many guys, but only because I am supposed to. I am not a butch-looking girl, and my friends and family have no ideas of my true feelings. I have never had a relationship with a woman, although I have had many crushes. What I have obviously said is that I think I'm gay. I have never admitted that to anyone until recently, not even to myself. I can only pretend to be straight for just so long. The pressure is getting to me, and I'm afraid of someone finding out. I guess that's why I've written you, because my identity is still protected. I realize you are an extremely busy person, but can you give me any advice or know of anyone I can talk to in confidence? I can't go on like this for much longer. I found this letter from the late 1970s in the bottom of one of the boxes of the Texas Gay and Lesbian Task Force collection in TW's Special Collections. It was unsigned except for a P.O. box number in Denton. Despite its rather unassuming appearance, this letter is so incredibly important, as it was likely the writer's first time coming out, and that writer only felt comfortable doing so because of the addressee, Dr. Edgar Bogle. In 2019, I started working on processing a 15 cubic foot collection donated to TW by Dr. Bogle, a former UNT professor and activist who lived here in Denton until this September, when she passed away. Many of those who live in Denton no longer know her name nor her work. However, she used to be incredibly important to this community. Dr. Bogle was an educator. She was an English professor and helped found the UNT Women's Studies program. She really loved cats even more than I do, which is saying something. She was an avid art enthusiast and LGBTQ activist here in Denton and all over the state, truly. She was passionate, if not a bit passive-aggressive in her letter writing when going after bigots and jerks. But of course, I only know all of this from her collection, never having met her in person. In a 1977 letter to the editor of Denton County Enterprise, Jerry B. Stout, Bogle describes herself as, quote, a gay woman whose home is in Denton. As she told Stout in the same letter, she was afraid to out herself, quote, lest my friends and employer be upset and indeed ostracized, end quote. As one of the first 3 openly queer faculty members in the state of Texas, she said she felt, quote, watched and judged every minute, end quote. She had to constantly be on guard to protect herself while continuously and simultaneously coming out to every single person she met in order to advocate for her students. I wish I had the time to tell you her full story, but I can't do that justice in 6 to 7 minutes. I couldn't even do it in 24 hours. The queer archival methodology I follow suggests that as archivists we must, quote, resist an urge to stabilize the records into skillfully accessible collections in order to consider new ways to understand and represent dynamic bodies that produce records and are produced by records. When I originally went into this collection, which TW waited over 10 years to do anything with, I did so with the intent to digitize it to bring to light the LGBTQ plus activism in Denton during the 70s and 80s. In doing so, I had hoped to show how things had changed, how far we had come. However, as I began reading the letters like the one Bogle received from that anonymous writer, I found myself realizing I was attempting to stabilize Bogle's collection in order to tell a clear story of activism that does not exist. There is no stop, no true end to Dr. Bogle's work. The same issues she fought against today and recorded in this collection are still being fought against in our communities. For instance, the anti-LGBTQ plus discrimination ordinance she discussed in her letter in the 70s with Stout is still being debated today in Denton County. I originally wrote this following one of Denton County's City Council's mini work sessions on such a non-discrimination ordinance, although I hesitate to truly call it a work session as we still have made no progress on it even after 40 years. Additionally, in a 1980 letter to the then Denton County Sheriff Kenneth George, Bogle addressed the murder of a gay man in Lake Dallas as a spokesperson for the Gay and Lesbian Association of Denton because the LGBTQ community was fearful for their safety and did not feel as if the police would protect them. Many LGBTQ folk today still have this same fear following the murder of several trans women of color in Dallas over the past several years. In a few weeks, we'll have another Trans Day of Remembrance, during which we read off the names of trans folk lost to violence this year, many of whom will likely have passed due to police brutality. I keep finding parallel after parallel between Dr. Bogle's life and the current lived experience of LGBTQ folk today in the same spaces. One stands out to me in particular. I found a collection of newspaper articles that called for the firing of gay teachers by different superintendents in the DFW area, including in Denton ISD, which still does not have a non-discrimination ordinance that protects LGBTQ individuals. While trying to figure out what box to put that in, I began to cry because every word was so fucking familiar. I can go onto Facebook right now and see parents calling for the exact same thing. When I came across that piece, I stopped planning, I stopped digitizing, and just started reading. Queered mythology archivists are asked to consider 6 things as they work with collections: the participatory ethos, connectivity, storytelling, intervention, reframing, reimagining, and flexibility. To do so is to question how we work with archives and our assumptions that there is an ideal configuration for any collection, that there is only one story for a collection, and that there is one storyteller for a collection. I once assumed that there was an ideal configuration for this collection by Dr. Bogle, that it had to go from point A to point B. But through working through this collection, I have come to understand that there is no end to Bogle's work. Even though she herself is no longer with us, it is ongoing, just as the LGBTQ activism in Denton is still happening. Thus, her collection does not exist as static, but rather is ever becoming each time I read another letter or another bank statement or another note, continuously retelling and telling and retelling again the story of Dr. Edra Bogle and those she fought for and with.
Check.
Check. Check. Check.
Memento Mori.
The oceans rise, and the forests burn. We are baptized in water and fire as the earth heralds apocalypse. Let us read from our book of Revelation.
Out from the mouths of our children an anthemic dirge is heard. Our hopes and dreams are dead, yet we love our dreams to death. Lyre and lies at the ready, I'll journey to the lands of the Furies, where art and artifice fall into deaf ears. We have come to reclaim that which is gone. For the sake of our soul, we put it all on the line, and even past that damned line where hope cannot go. Our poems and songs, our paints of sunlight and starlight might calm the rampaging beasts of the earth and open air, but not here, not those money green with envy. Those mold interred revenants already given into death, but yet still chanting, buy, sell, buy, sell. They think of us the least, us chasers of quiet sadness and overwhelming beauty, us with silly notions of truth, love, and mystery. Calls now echo across these burning plains for our heads on silver platters. Fools! Don't they know down here our lips will go on with our siren song beneath the waves? It's true, we who wake serve apocalypse, dispelling that blind bliss which shrouds the ignorance of our corpse inheritance. Mired together in wild mother's reckoning, we drink full of forged fire memory as our ancestors drown to the dregs to forget. Do not look back, dear friends, and do not partake of offered fruits, overripe and sickly sweet. Under here, wormy consumption consumes you. Us who know we have fallen may yet rise again, and a head in the hand can only be held higher. Memento Mori.
As your mother's womb knit your body together, so shall your grave unmake you. Your flesh will soften and liquefy, returning all the matter of you back to the mother of all. Let us invoke our patron deity. Chant with us.
Raise up! 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 Raise up!
Raise up. I stand in the question of stacked stones I did not raise. This altar is a human ruin, where trees pray in rotted pews, and vines lift their tendrilled hands to the sun shining in, half through colored plains of frozen time, and half unadulterated. The artificial arch of his heaven, having long fallen down to the soil of her earth.
Raise up!
After my first dumbfounded eternities, my forsaken mouth cracks open, and the cacophony of dusty words that spore out become a ramshackle shed. I build logos by logos in order to house myself in that place where grief and awe commingle.
Raise up!
Something's been eating at me. Some nameless wild thing growing up through me, from the snail mucus in mycelium beneath the soles of my feet. Its ancient mysteries branching out around my head, a hungry halo thicket of thorns, both sacred and profane.
Raise up!
Is this where God is? Not the church, but in what creates the ruin. The state, the structure is what we thought God is. Our ego is what we thought.
Raise up!
Resurrection is apocalypse. It came for the curtain to the holiest, and it comes again now. Change is sprouting from buried roots to break open our cornerstones. It will raise up. Is there to be a beyond for this temple of mine? Because I am already choking on leaves.
Raise up! 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 Memento Mori.
Remember, you must die. Now behold our corpse God. Join us and partake in our true communion. For in death, all we are is dirt and gore.
everybody, and welcome back. Let's try this again. Thank you for being here. If you haven't yet made a donation to the You Are Here DMAC Denton project, which provides therapy scholarships for artists and musicians in town, that's the QR code that's on your program. And if you don't have a program, I'll give you one. So thank you so much for being here. Make sure you grab a zine and some baked goods on your way out, because there's a lot in there, and you should check it out. Thank you again to Rubber Gloves. Thank you, Chad and Randall back there. You guys are amazing. Thank you for having us. Tip your bartenders. Love y'all. Let's get the next half of our show going, shall we? Okay.
So this was something I wrote some years ago. It's 10 minutes long, but I cut it. So just know that I'm going to skip around a little, but I hope it all makes sense. Death. I've been aware of it from an early age. My parents were older when they had me, so my grandparents were much older. I saw it. It was there in full view, imminent. I knew exactly what it looks like, and on New Year's Eve, 2005, it almost suffocated me. That's the night I lost my father. My dad and I grew up on the same farm that's been in our family since the late 1800s. He was my grounding force. He was my soulmate, the person I could look to make sense of myself, and as an only child, that was especially important. Skip ahead to 2016, another death, a hard one, a friend, a peer, a bandmate, a roommate, a brother figure, a father himself, Nevada Hill. He was diagnosed with cancer, and it was a progressive one. I had met him before, but didn't really interact with him until around 2008, when he asked me to play some shows with a project of his called Zanzibar Snails. He involved me in a few different endeavors of his as well, and really brought me back into the music scene and reacquainted. I was able to be reacquainted with it as I had moved away for about a year. Then he also became my roommate. I was in the process of buying a house, and he was in the process of getting a divorce, and thusly needed a place to live that wasn't a party house, as he had a young daughter, Jillian. We also did a radio show together on a friend's AM station, 1670 AM, which later basically became Kusu. Hey, 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 that they ran out of their house. These were all monumental things for me that still affect my life today, establishing my home and my place in the music scene in DFW. Nevada is, notice I did not say was, a father, and had custody of his daughter Jillian every other weekend. For me, a daddy's girl, to get to witness a father taking care of his daughter was just a certain brand of heaven in retrospect. My parents separated when I was 11, so witnessing a father-daughter weekend was re-edifying my own father's love in a way, hearkening memories of when I visited my dad. I remember one visit to the farm to see my dad, accidentally arriving sick with the flu. I was running a high fever and achy all over. My dad set me up on the fold-out couch in the living room so he could more easily take care of me. He made me the best raspberry tea I've ever had, and I remember asking him just before he was about to go off to his room to get some sleep if he thought I was going to die. He replied in a subdued, humorous tone, "Oh, I reckon not." Nevada and I were roommates for a little over 2.5 years, so I got to witness him being a father quite a lot. Even when he had to discipline Jillian, it still had a heartwarming effect, the love and care that goes into honing a good human being. He moved to Dallas in 2013. It was shortly after moving that he was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 31. Eventually, he was able to go to MD Anderson for treatment. One time, he asked me to take him to Houston for a day of checkups and treatment. We went the night before, and his parents paid for us to have a nice hotel room and some nice meals. This trip was really special to me. We ended up having some heart-to-hearts, some meaningful conversations, some things I needed to hear. First, he told me a story about seeing me in the street in 2006. I had just moved back to Texas and was about to embark on a tour for the first time with this dark folk band I was in for a hot minute. I must have been unloading my equipment into the converted school bus we were taking on tour when you drove by. He said he saw me and he got this message. It's hard for me to properly communicate it, but I knew what he was trying to tell me, that he didn't really know me at the time, but got this feeling I was going to be in his life. Her, that girl, that one. Then he went on to tell me something else. He confided in me how scared he was for his daughter if he were to die. He told me she was his soulmate, and that if he wasn't around, there would be no one that would truly understand her. It was a deep fear, but it was also so validating for me to hear a father speak of his daughter in such terms. These were the feelings I had for my own father, that he was my soulmate, that he was the one person in the world that helped me to make sense of myself. These felt like words I was meant to hear. These were words I needed to hear, not only for myself, but maybe also for Julian someday. Fast forward to November 2015. I visit Nevada about once a week in Dallas. It's hard for him to leave his house due to pain issues. It's just before Thanksgiving, and his family lives in Fort Worth. His older brother and sister will be in town visiting from California. He shares with me that he's having a lot of anxiety about going to Fort Worth for Thanksgiving, and he doesn't exactly understand why. Neither of us do. I offered to pick him up and take him back to Dallas. That way his parents wouldn't have to miss any time with his siblings. Great plan, except for Nevada never did make it back home after Thanksgiving. He ended up in the hospital and on his parents' couch so that they could take care of him. I visited him there. I remember him telling me that he didn't want me to worry about him. I texted him later that evening when I got home that seeing him made me less worried. He replied, "That makes me smile. Thank you." Things were getting worse. It's now January 2016, and I get a text from him in the late afternoon. "Bad news from Houston. If you have time to come to Houston this week, I would." Ouch. I lost it. I knew it was the end, but didn't at the same time. I went to Houston the very next day, and that next day in Houston, again, I felt better seeing him. Seeing him gave me hope that he would survive. I remember this first visit at MD Anderson. He now had a colostomy bag. I remember not wanting him to feel like he was gross in any way. I remember his parents being there in the room with him and me greeting him with a kiss on both cheeks, then on the mouth, with the kind of permission one takes with family, that kind of kiss and that kind of affection. I'd never done this before, but it became my routine, my way of letting him know I was not queasy or grossed out. I remember him saying to me that first time I greeted him this way, "I like how the Europeans do it." He asked me to visit as much as I could. He said he'd do it for me. I went once a week to MD Anderson and would stay the night in his room to give his parents a break. They had rented an apartment in Houston because when you're in that situation, you need someone there 24/7 to be your advocate and caregiver. Now, fast forward to the end. I was there for his last 4 days in his room waiting. I remember taking shifts holding his hand. During one of my shifts, I was alone with him. I wanted to give him permission to let go, that it was okay, but he was a fighter. It was going to be a while. We kept thinking any minute, days of thinking any minute now. I had laid down to take a nap with instructions to wake me up if anything happened. I was woken up. It was very early on February 18th, exactly a month after his 34th birthday. I stumbled to his bedside and took his hand. You couldn't tell if he was breathing, but I could see his pulse in his neck. I counted 3 heartbeats, and he was gone. There were 3 of us there with him, one of those being Jillian's mother, Emont, whom he was adamant about being there. Emont is magic, but that's a whole other story. I'm able to have certain perspective at this point. Death can serve as a catalyst. You slough off fair weather friends, and you focus on what's left. I remember at one point when I was dealing with my dad being ill, I had this picture of myself drowning in a vast and stormy sea. Then at some point later after his passing, I eventually got to the other side of it and could look back with a new vision of myself as a brilliant swimmer, much more aerodynamic. Speaking of what's left is love. It's still possible, years after my father has passed, for me to be distinctly reminded that I'm loved. They say that cardinals represent lost loved ones, and since Nevada's passing, I've found cardinal feathers, sometimes in odd places. That never happened before. I'm happy for the reminders.
Is it okay if I remove this mic? Can I? Cool. Thank you. Okay. Let me move this so you can see me. Okay. Ooh, bright lights. Okay. Who's that black private dick who's a sex machine to all the chicks? Shaft! Who is the man who risked his neck for his brother man? Shaft! Violence. It's on the rise in our society. It's often encouraged by our obsessions with cop shows and morally repugnant renegades and fathers raising their children. Now, we like to perpetuate cycles like those of violence that are often passed down between young men, young black men specifically, and their fathers. Now, it's not always physical, it's also verbal and psychological, but most importantly, children, it's done out of love. Who's that cat who won't cop out when there's danger all about? Shaft. Now, I suppose my father wanted me to be tough because the world was tough, but I wasn't tough. I was sensitive and needy and 5. And I needed to be put into sports so that I could build some goddamn character. You know, so back in middle school, our coaches would have us boys fight each other so that we could bring honor to our family names and prove our manhood. And I suppose they figured, well, boys will be boys, and boys this age should look for other boys, and those other boys should be older boys, and those older boys should wrestle the younger boys so that those younger boys could know what it is to struggle, because life has struggles, and you can either get pinned or submit. Ooh, yeah. But, hey, you know, what happens? What happens when, let's say a younger boy just finds an older boy, and that older boy teaches that younger boy to grow out of being a boy and becoming a fucking man? Well, who is to say what happens between two other boys who just become best friends and they join Boy Scouts together and they play on the same football team and then they volunteer at the science place and then they fall in love somehow because they figured out some healthy relationship dynamic in all this chaos, and then because coaches only taught conflict resolution through violence, they have a violent falling out, and also no one knows of these two boys and their shame. And so one of them gets not a broken back, but an injured back nonetheless, and then the other gets a hole put in the ear and moves to Virginia and eventually lives inside of himself for the next 10, 15 years or so. You know that cat Shaft's a bad mother. Shut your mouth. I'm talking about Shaft, and we can dig it, because he's a complicated man. No one understands him but his woman, John Shaft. Yeah, so I haven't always been this personable. I used to live in a laundry room, a 10 by 5 by 10 foot space. I'd lost my job and I spent up to 18 hours a day in there most days. It took me going to go see my therapist to understand how unhealthy that was, primarily because I didn't talk to other people or interact with them because I simply didn't want to. That and, I didn't like when people said nice things about me. People would say good things and shit all the time, like, hey, you're doing a good job. Well, you're full of shit. Hey, you look nice today. No, I don't. Hey, you deserve good things. Fuck you. I wasn't fucking hearing it, okay? I got PTSD, I'm dinged and scratched up, I pull out my hair, I'm a fucking monster. So I bought a shirt. It was a green shirt, and I figured that'll help. My therapist liked it. They said, hey, that green shirt looks good on you. Really complements your skin tone. You always wear dark colors. Why do you always wear dark colors? You look so good in colors. The world's a dark place, Kevin. Fuck colors. Man, I was paying you a compliment. Words hurt. Fuck compliments. I'm sensing some hostility from you. Yo, no one asked you, Kevin. You don't got the answers. You know, like I can't even pay attention or be present when I'm babysitting my neighbor's kids because I'm in my head the whole fucking time. So one of them just pukes on the floor because they just ate a whole jar of pickles and shit. And then the other's having an existential crisis and walks up to me and is like, "Matt, why was I born? Why am I here?" That's when I emotionally flatten out and I get down on their level and I tell them like this: "You're here because God's dead." And yeah. And then they clap back with, "Well, Matt, that's just great." Waka waka, thank you.
We are surrounded by death. Its invisible hand reaching. Death on the news. A lack of dignity. Horror all around us. We go numb. The other day, even in the silence of my room, I was greeted by death. It was just a very large, very dead spider, but I couldn't look away. Couldn't move to pick its body off the floor. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think of anything at all. The present requires so much concentration. Where does all this loss come from? Sometimes it feels like looking for a way out of a room with no doors. The year lasts for what seems like forever. It is a kind of death, a cornucopia of grief. We try to forget it. Loss of time, loss of safety, loss of connection. We grieve the planet. We grieve the countless unnecessary deaths. We grieve what was once taken for granted. I miss my friends, the ones who left, the ones who stayed, the way we used to gather, the ones who are gone forever. When I heard the news, I felt the familiar loneliness of grief watch over me. I want to say out loud that I miss him, that I feel intensely guilty for not being there more, for not writing one last letter. I want to talk to him one more time, to say I love you, to say thank you for being there for me during a time in my life where I was more alone than I have ever been. He was laughter. He was comfort. He taught me so much. I will never forget. If we're to keep living, it's important to remember those who left us. I want to remember. I will remember. Where do our minds go when they're gone? It could be the pandemic. It could be the weather. It could be the brain chemicals. It could be years of trauma. Whatever it is, I haven't been myself. Like so many, I isolated and still haven't really returned. At some point during the year that never ended, the walls started closing in. Then time stopped completely, and I no longer saw the point in being alive. I collapsed for months, kept afloat by muscle memory. Required intervention, reintroduced to medication. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes I am not so sure. My senses feel dull, but I don't think about dying all the time anymore. I see my therapist every week. Perspective. I'm trying to revive myself. I go through the motions. In many ways, this is emotion, an automatic reflex. I don't know what to do, so I throw a party. Sometimes your coping mechanisms get creative. Sometimes it has to be more than just you and your sadness. Sometimes it is good to collectively sigh, collectively cry, collectively scream. I'm trying to believe it is worth something, that it means something, that there is a way out of the room, an escape hatch into living again. Sometimes the combined loss of everything feels enormous and overwhelming. Other times it is just a fact of life, something else to live through. The world wasn't meant for us to survive, not in the end anyway. Despite it all, I'm trying not to be a dead spider, doing my best not to find a dark corner where I can lay down and expire. I'm trying to keep myself alive, though it is exhausting, and I know I'm not the only one. If you relate to any of this, it means we're not alone. It means we have to keep trying. It means there is hope, even when everything feels hopeless. It means we have to keep on living, even if it's just for each other. I love you. Don't give up.
Struggling to process that you're gone. Since you've died, I've consumed every mention, every tear that has fallen in your memory. I cannot find you. I've become an amateur cartographer, mapping out your existence, searching, retracing your celebration of life to create the entirety of your existence in the hopes that I can find you. I cannot find you. I'm searching for you between every line, in every book we read together, in the debris at the intersection where you laughed for the last time. I cannot find you. I'm following you down the lines of the palm of the soulmate you left behind. I'm searching for you in the specks and the color of their eyes, and I cannot find you. I've collected pieces of you in every story everyone tells me of you. Looked for you in the snow in Colorado, every bar in Germany, every trail in Arizona, and I cannot find you. I could cross every ocean, stand in every place that you have been. I could cultivate all the salt and the earth and the snow and the sand, and I couldn't find you. My memory is short, my friend. It breaks, and it loses little pieces along the way. I don't want the piece that I lose to be the color of your eyes or the warmth of your presence. So come find me. I will make you coffee. I will sit beside you, reading coffee grounds like sailors like sailors read the stars. I will tell you stories so you know where to meet me. Come find me.
Maybe not that.
Good afternoon. My name is Edgar Derby. This is an ode to a dying friend. Dead isn't what it used to be. The servants of God in chains negotiate peace. Teach the world to listen and speak of things to come. The story of human gallantry, touching the sun. What a human thing to do. But is it any good? Is it any good? Is it any good? We can sing about looming spires. We can sing about dragons' fires. But the butterflies will dance because they know they should. Friend, do you know what you mean to me? The end of the tyrant's reign could not be as sweet if the world would listen to their own fucking song. A story of hubris and vanity. As your life and times flash before your eyes, with all the mistakes I recognize, can we ferret out their tripwires, rearrange our own funeral pyres, and the moths will get their chance to be misunderstood. won't deny what you have found for a miserable life above the ground. A two-act play set in the rounds, a pin drop bomb of silent sounds. A blacktop melted, tilt and sway, or levitate tomorrow, today, with love and rockets in the fray. Swapped a helmet for a bloody beret. There is no love, there is no now. The back of flames, a whispering row, directly neath the broken bow. A mantra saves you anyhow. In death we find eternal rest. 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 In death we find eternal rest.
Okay, thanks everybody. Leon Carlo and I are gonna play kind of us out. About 10 minutes? Yeah, do about 10 minutes and then we've got time to all kind of decompress. Thank you to all the beautiful and amazing performers tonight. Thank you Rubber Gloves, thank you Spiderweb Salon, fundraising for DMAC, and you are here. So thanks everybody.